The ringing stopped. I picked up my bass and started to leave, and it started again. After the third round, exasperated, with a taxi I didn't want to lose waiting out front, I plopped down on the bed and picked up and said, "What?" On the other end was a hysterical woman. "He's gone. He killed himself," screamed the hysterical woman loudly. Wait, who is this? I didn't know who he was, and I didn't know who she was. It's Courtney. Where's Kat? She's at the club. Who is this? She asked. She must have gotten the hotel room number from our manager. It's Maureen. He fucking killed himself. Kurt fucking shot himself. Maureen, he fucking shot himself. Tell Kat to call me right now. Please have her call me. She was sobbing hysterically and said the same thing 7 different ways as though neither of us could believe what she was saying and we were trying to get the lines right. That's okay, this was not a message I wanted to get wrong. I told her I was heading back to the club now and would have Kat call immediately. Presumably, she went on to the next shocked recipient of a call from Courtney Love on the day Kurt Cobain's body was found in his seat home with a gunshot wound to the head, a shotgun at his side. I thought I should call the club. I didn't even have the itinerary with me, let alone my purse. The taxi was waiting. I don't know how the fuck we toured without cell phones and GPS, but we did. Whatever number I got out of the phone book was going to be an automated message about upcoming shows and how to buy tickets. I wasn't going to get a person. But this news could not be told over the phone. Especially to this crowd. Lori, Kat and 7-year bitch was from Seattle, they'd known Kurt before. And Michael. He and Kurt were just about to do a music project together. Kurt had wanted to try something different. I would have to tell them in person. But I had to talk to someone. It was just too overwhelming to process. I told the cab to keep the meter running and that my road manager would tip him well. I didn't know who else to call, so I called Steve Albini, who had recorded Nirvana's last album, In Utero. I'd been sort of seeing Steve here and there at the time. He was in the studio with the Touch and Go band, Mule, recording. Steve picked up the phone. He already knew. At first, he thought I was another rock journalist looking for a statement from the person who recorded what was now Nirvana's last album. You could tell he was shocked by it, and that it was a personal loss. They had spent some intense time together in Minnesota, working on it at Pachyderm Studios. But I knew I had to go back to the club, and soundcheck didn't seem to matter anymore. Now, I had to tell everyone this horrible news. I walked in the back of the club through the open stage door, and stood on the stage just taking in the happy scene that I knew was going to be destroyed in seconds. Old friends ribbing each other, telling stories, complimenting each other's work or shoes or hair. Everyone was laughing and in a great mood. First I took Lori aside, and I told her. She fell apart and started screaming, "No, no, no, no." Everyone else came to see what was going on, and I told one, who told the other, and I stepped back as the room fell apart, the most tragic game of operator ever. After that, everything changed. I didn't want to go to the funeral. It was starting to feel really unsavory, like a VIP guest list. People were vying for spots and invites. Frankly, it was disgusting. The next day I flew home to Chicago, and everyone else was headed to Seattle. Especially Kat, who was destroyed, and whom Courtney would lean on very heavily in the coming days and weeks. Kat even joined Courtney at the fucking morgue when she went to identify Kurt's body. That's when Courtney gave Kat Kurt's watch. He is wearing it in the crime scene photos. It was a crime that he was gone, but it was by his own hand, the same hand that wore that watch, and played that guitar, and caressed his sweet baby Frances Bean. I think part of Kurt felt like he fucked up indie rock for everyone. For the bands, for the fans, for the genre, the music. But then I think a part of him felt like, yeah, fuck you clowns, here comes indie rock, and he could leverage his position to help other indie bands, and maybe be a part of making the music business less disgusting. I think his choice of Steve Albini to record In Utero is excellent proof of that. I remember hearing the story about Courtney convincing him to buy a Lexus. They had gotten their first record company advance for Nevermind. He bought it, and was relentlessly teased by his before friends. Kurt brought it back, and as far as I know they just used their old car. That, in my opinion, kinda sums it up for me as far as killing himself. There were other stories. That Kurt had caught Courtney cheating, and now Kurt was with another girl, holed up somewhere for a while, and that's when Courtney had an intervention and he went to treatment days before his death. Gibby Haynes, the singer of the Butthole Surfers, was at the same treatment center. Gibby, the guy whose band Courtney had stolen $10,000 from many years before, and never paid back. Lori got blamed for all of that. It was a fucked up thing to do, leaving her in the lurch like that. That day, I drove her to the airport in Minneapolis, not realizing I was her getaway car. About 2 months after Kurt died, I was at Lori's house, rooming up in her attic while up from Chicago for band practice. I didn't normally answer Lori's phone when I was there. She got tons of call and her machine would answer, so if it was for me, I'd just pick up. But one afternoon, the phone kept ringing, someone kept calling back again and again. I couldn't hear the machine clearly from the attic upstairs, but I could hear the ringing. Maybe it was Lori trying to reach me, so I ran down and picked it up. Hello? Lori? She's not here right now. This is Maureen. Maureen. There was an awkward pause. It's Courtney. Can you please tell Lori, oh my god, fucking hell, fucking Kristen, fucking OD'd. My friend Paul Erickson from Hammerhead had found Kristen Pfaff, the current bassist for Courtney's band Hole, in the bathtub. I'm pretty sure he loved her. Kristen Pfaff, the girl who could play bass better than me, had overdosed. But I was chosen over her to be in Babes because I was friends with Kat and Lori in a much different way, from way back. Courtney, who borrowed a fuck of a lot from Kat, her signature dress. Her hair, her red beret, even used the same Rickenbacker guitar as Kat. Why not take the bassist who almost joined Kat's band? Kristen was asked, and she joined. The last time I talked to Kristen, she took me aside at a show at 7th Street Entry to get my advice on whether or not she should get paid per show and album, or sign on to the record deal and take royalties. I told her to get paid up front. After the Butthole Surfers heist, I didn't think anything with royalties was going to turn out well for anyone playing with Courtney. It was a fucking shame. About a year or so later, one night in Seattle, I hooked up with someone who could get interesting drugs. His name was Dylan Carlson. That name means something to those who subscribe to Kurt and Courtney conspiracy theories, but I didn't know who he was. I just knew we had the same drug proclivities and mutual friends in bands, and he could apparently score. I remember him sitting there, in a wooden chair, looking uncomfortable, but also relieved and open. We weren't hooking up, we were just hanging and doing drugs together. It was cocaine or speed, I don't remember. But it turns out he was glad to be with someone who didn't know that he gave Kurt Cobain the gun that he killed himself with. That in fact it was his gun. I didn't know it was rumored that he found Kurt's body, but did not report it right away. And because I wasn't hanging around him for that reason, which I see now was something that probably happened a lot after Kurt died, I wasn't curious. I didn't know to be. And maybe that's why he started talking about it. Because it could be on his terms, not like an inquisition or investigation. He wanted to talk about it. He seemed like he needed to talk about it. Imagine what it would feel like to have given someone a gun that they then killed themselves with. He told me that he was the one in the Nirvana song In Bloom. He's the one who likes all our pretty songs, and he likes to sing along and he likes to shoot his gun, but he don't know what it means. He couldn't believe I didn't know that. As if he hadn't been around anyone who didn't know that, for eons. You could tell he was happy about it, but also tortured, what with the gun part. I didn't know what was public and what was not. He said that he and Courtney found Kurt's body before the police did, but they didn't know what to do, so they waited. I nodded, understanding. There was no foul play, and I didn't suspect any. Frankly, if I was a drug addict who had just given my gun to someone who then blew their head off with it, I would wait till someone else discovered the body, too. Especially if they were a world-famous rock star. I'd know I didn't do it. All in all, I will always remember that night, at least what I remember of it, because he struck me as the saddest person I had ever met. By sad, I mean deep, active grief. Next week it will be 25 years since Kurt Cobain died. That's all. Maureen Herman.